So, another of my niche areas is disability and chronic illness. I suffer from both myself. I have various different illnesses, including Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, fibromyalgia, ulcerative colitis, um, various mental health stuff, depression and anxiety. Um, I have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and arthritis. Um, and I found it really, really hard to adapt when my mobility became really bad. I spent 2 years in a wheelchair full time. Um, I've built myself up a lot since then, but my mobility is still very bad. I use a scooter and crutches to get around, and rely heavily on my car. And for me, the biggest issue was trying to find a new sense of self. My identity seemed to go out with my mobility. I used to be very, very active. I used to go to the gym. I used to hike. I hiked up mountains, um, and I loved all that. And I moved to a place where there's loads and loads of coastal walks with, the premise of doing all these wonderful walks, and then to find that I couldn't do any. And I also found it really, really hard, the sense of isolation and loneliness. And I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. But what I can do as a coach to help you with chronic illness and disability is to identify and accept your limitations. Because as much as people say, oh, you're not defined by your limitations and you can do anything if you put your mind to it, it's simply not true. In many cases, absolutely, the sky is the limit. But for people struggling with disabilities and chronic illnesses, there is a limit, and I think it's really, really important to accept where those limits are and to learn to pace yourself so as not to push past those limits and make yourself worse. But then on the flip side of that is finding where your strengths lie and really bring out the most of those, making the very, very best of them. And that's something I'd done with life coaching, finding that I was a good life coach was a massive part of that for me. And also just dealing with all the negative emotions, whether you've become disabled suddenly through an accident or an acute illness, or if it's something that's been lifelong or something that's sort of crept up gradually, all of that is going to carry with it different kind of emotions. You could go through grief. Grief was a massive one for me. I mourned for the person that I used to be, and I then had to rebuild who I was and then get to know myself. So as a coach, I can help you with accepting your limitations, finding and building on your strengths, talking through and working through all your emotions that go with that, and exploring the isolation, the loneliness, and your sense of identity to find who you really are, and to work with your disability. Because as much as people like to say your disability shouldn't define you and you're more than your disability, which is absolutely correct, for a lot of us, our disability plays a part in many, if not all, aspects of life. So it's something that can't just be ignored and picked up later when you can deal with it. It's always there, but it can be worked with. So contact me, we'll have a chat about it. I can't wait to hear from you, and let's see how we can work together.